Good day to you from Inside Drug Discovery. This video describes a new drug approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The drug is Vanrafia. Vanrafia was approved on April 2nd, 2025. This was actually an accelerated approval. Vanrafia is approved for the treatment of proteinuria in adults with primary immunoglobulin A nephropathy. And we'll discuss this indication further in a later slide. The API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient in Vanrafia, is atrasentan. Vanrafia is administered once daily, orally, as a 0.75 milligram tablet. That is quite a low dose. The applicant for Vanrafia's NDA is Novartis. The prescribing information insert of Vanrafia is cited at the bottom of this slide, and much of the information in this video is pulled from this one reference. Vanrafia treats proteinuria. What is proteinuria? It is the presence of excess protein in the urine. Humans are not supposed to have too much protein excreted via the urine, and the presence of protein is a sign of kidney dysfunction. Diagnosis of proteinuria involves a urine test. One such urine test is UPCR, the urine protein-to-creatinine ratio. Creatinine levels in urine are relatively constant. In a healthy individual, the UPCR is less than 0.2 grams of protein to grams of creatinine. In the context of Vanrafia, a patient's UPCR levels are at least 1.5 before treatment. Vanrafia is not indicated for simple proteinuria, but instead for patients with proteinuria as a result of immunoglobulin A nephropathy, IgAN. In IgAN, complexes of immune proteins form deposits in the glomeruli of the kidney. These deposits cause inflammation. The glomeruli can no longer properly filter proteins, and proteins start to spill into the urine. There is your proteinuria. How exactly does Vanrafia affect this problem? That takes us to the mechanism of action of Vanrafia. Vanrafia's mechanism of action is as an endothelin A receptor antagonist. The drug is quite potent with a Ki of only 0.034 nanomolar or 34 picomolar. I would call that exquisite potency, especially for a small molecule drug. Recall that in IgAN patients, deposits of immune-related proteins build in the glomeruli. As a result, endothelin-1 levels increase. Endothelin-1 is an inflammatory peptide, among other functions, and acts through binding the endothelin A receptor, which initiates the inflammatory response. Vanrafia, as an ETA receptor antagonist, blocks ET1, reduces the inflammatory response, and ultimately decreases the UPCR in a patient. As a chemist, I like to look at the physicochemical properties of the drug. So the properties of atrasentan definitely fit the profile of an orally administered small molecule drug. The only outlier property is atrasentan's number of rotatable bonds, 12 rotatable bonds. Most of these rotatable bonds are part of the dibutylamide part of the structure. In Vanrafia, atrasentan is formulated as its hydrochloride salt. So this amine nitrogen is protonated in its administered form. This slide shows some of the PK properties of atrasentan. The half-life is long at 24 to 41 hours. Note that the oral bioavailability is not known, which is perhaps surprising but not uncommon. Oral drugs often do not have human IV PK data to allow determination of human oral availability. As a result, clearance and volume of distribution cannot be determined and are instead reported as VD over F and CL over F. Tmax is short, so atrasentan is likely absorbed in the stomach. The compound is extensively bound in the plasma. For metabolism and excretion, atrasentan has two fairly equally important metabolic fates. First is oxidation through various CYP3A isoforms. No metabolites are specifically described, but I would guess that demethylation of the ether on the right or ring oxidation are two likely options. The second metabolic fate is glucuronidation of the carboxylic acid. In a study involving radiolabeled drug, 86% of the radioactive material was observed in the feces. Only about 5% was unchanged drug, which is a sign that atrasentan is reasonably well absorbed and likely has a high bioavailability. Less than 4% of the radioactivity was found in the urine, so renal excretion is a very minor pathway. Finally, what are the warnings and adverse reactions that are possible with Vanrafia? At the top, we have embryo-fetal toxicity. This is a serious warning, and it is in a black border because it is a boxed warning on the labeling of Vanrafia. Patients taking Vanrafia are advised to take precautions from becoming pregnant while taking the drug. Other warnings include potential hepatotoxicity, fluid retention, and decreased sperm counts. In terms of adverse reactions, at least 5% of patients experienced peripheral edema and/or anemia. That concludes this summary of the approval of the new drug application of Vanrafia, which was granted by the U.S. FDA on April 2nd of 2025. Vanrafia contains atrasentan as its active pharmaceutical ingredient and is approved for the treatment of proteinuria in adult patients with immunoglobulin A nephropathy. Thank you for watching this video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, making a comment, or leaving a question. Take care.